let's talk about something that nobody wants to admit. There is skinny privilege in the alternative community, especially when it comes to fashion. The reason I'm bringing this up today is because I see a lot of content creators, alt content creators, who are talking about how in order to be alt that you have to be creative, that you have to DIY your clothes, you have to thrift your clothes, when people are forgetting that not everyone has access to a thrift store, and also that thrift stores aren't exactly plus size inclusive. And a lot of these alt creators typically are skinny and they're not in the plus size community. And by no means am I in the plus size community either, full disclaimer. I just want to advocate for them because while I won't necessarily understand that struggle, I want to let people know that, like, I'm fully aware of this and I want to spread awareness and kind of open people's eyes up a little bit so they can see this issue at full hand. Because alternative subcultures are about being inclusive, they are about expression, and we're about rejecting the mainstream. And if plus size people feel excluded from that because there aren't things out there for them, then what's the point in saying that the alt community is going to be inclusive of people who want to reject the mainstream? That doesn't make sense to me. One of the biggest things that I want to talk about is thrifting as a whole, because we do know that thrifting is huge in alternative subcultures. Many subcultures rely on DIYing clothes, thrifting clothes, because they are more affordable. And when subcultures, especially punk and goth, were arising, a lot of people didn't come from a lot of money, so they basically had to go to places to spend less money on clothes, or they made it, which was going to be a cheaper alternative for them. A lot of people will go to thrift stores and they will see that there aren't many size inclusive racks out there. Sometimes they only go up to an XL, or they go up to a large depending on where you are. And it's really hard for plus size people who are in the alt community to find alt clothes. Like I said, thrifting is a key part of alternative subcultures. Budget friendly, it's more sustainable, it helps the environment. Also, there's a huge admiration for vintage aesthetics that you can find in thrift stores that you'll also see within alternative subcultures. That being said, a lot of small town thrift stores, or just thrift stores in general, may not have clothes that are going to cater to people of different body types, or they're going to have clothes that people just aren't going to like because they're full of grandma clothes. I will say, online thrifting is a thing. You got stores like Poshmark, Vinted, Depop, where you are better off at probably finding plus size clothes. However, the issue is, if you are plus size, you shouldn't have to go online to buy your clothes. And that's just not an plus size issue. That is just a plus size issue within fashion in general. So many brands are not size inclusive, especially in stores. While brands may carry plus size stuff, they don't carry their plus size stuff in the actual physical store, and they're always told to go online. Why can't there be stuff for plus size people in store? Because telling people to just lose weight isn't going to help people. Because let's say if you have plus size people who want to lose weight, well, guess what? They still need clothes to wear to help them lose weight. It's like, damned if they do, damned if they don't. Sorry, I'm getting off topic, but I felt like that was still a really important point to make. Just because things can be purchased online, not everyone still has access to the internet. And I think that in itself is a privilege, to go online shopping for thrifting clothes that way. So telling people to just go to Depop, just go to Poshmark, I also don't find that to be helpful, because plus size people deserve to have access to go into physical stores to find things that they can wear. Because every time I go into a thrift store, I'm seeing more and more fast fashion popping up that is catered to smaller sizes. I'm not even a size small in clothes anymore. And even I sometimes have a harder time finding things in my size, because I do shop in like mediums or larges. And even then, I feel like all of that stuff is picked over and I simply can't fit into the smaller stuff. But I do think it is a privilege, and I still do have that privilege to shop and thrift successfully. Like this Taking Back Sunday shirt, I thrifted it. And it was a privilege that I found that in my size, on top of luck as well. but not everybody has the same luck and privilege that I have for being able to shop successfully, even though sometimes I do have my own challenges. And I think that is something that the alt community tends to just absolutely ignore, and that makes me really sad. Aside from the whole thrifting thing, there's also the whole just so and DIY attitude. Now, there is a creator on TikTok that I actually do like, but sometimes she can be kind of a dick in her comment section. And she is always posting about how thrifting and DIYing is essential to the alt community, which I absolutely agree. And she has a ton of great tips and tricks on finding pieces as you thrift or how to easily DIY something. But sometimes she'll just say, like, oh, you have a skills issue. You're a poser if you can't be creative in the alt community. And I just don't think that's right to say. Of course, like, using your imagination can be important when it comes to anyone's sense of style and how you want to style your clothes. I don't think you're necessarily a poser if you struggle with being creative. Especially if you're alt. That is the stupidest thing that I've ever heard in my life. We don't need to be a dick about that for those who have a skills issue. I just feel like it is a common go-to phrase for people in the alt community to say, well, just thrift it or just DIY it. And not everybody, again, has the time and the resources to DIY clothes. Very privileged take, like, it still costs money to go out and buy materials to DIY stuff. Not everybody has craft supplies laying around in their home. Just so easy to say, just sew it, just DIY it, just get a sewing machine. Do you realize how expensive sewing machines are? I can't even afford a sewing machine. I do things the old-fashioned way with a needle and thread because that's the only resource. Those are the resources that I have available to me, and I also don't have the space for a sewing machine, let alone that. It also takes a lot of time to learn a new skill, and it's one thing if someone's lazy and they don't want to do it, but if somebody just simply doesn't have the time and they do want to learn, it's really frustrating for them to be told, just learn the skill when maybe they don't have, again, the time, the money, and the resources to build that skill, even though they really want to. I just feel like sometimes it can be really frustrating to be told that you have to do more work in order to feel included within the alt community. I do think DIYing is absolutely one of the funnest aspects about alternative fashion, but sometimes, again, it's not always accessible to people. And I don't think we have to force a skill out of somebody. I'm not the best sewer, but I do what I can. I remember when I made that whole DIY upcycling video, those pants that I did to create pockets, I did not read any tutorials. I just did that out of my own imagination, and it turned out really bad, but at least I tried. I have to lose weight in order to fit into those pants again. But again, besides the point, not everybody can still think of that on the top of their head. And I still felt like those whole pants was a skill issue because I know I could have probably done that in a better way if I had watched a tutorial. But again, I didn't want to take the time to learn because I only had so much time to DIY that stuff, even though it was my own choice to do that. And then I just want to go back to the whole skinny privilege in alternative fashion really quick. As I mentioned, the creator Mallory Hart that I mentioned, she is a skinny alternative creator. And I feel like she's the perfect example of skinny privilege in the alt community. Especially, I've seen her say things like it's a skills issue or you have to be patient, just wait until you can find things in your size. I don't think that's very fair to say. Sure, you could be patient, you could wait until things show up, but why should you have to? I don't think that's right to say. I do think that there should be more visibility in thrift stores. I do think that there should be better finds for plus size people, regardless if you're alt. Also, people forget, like, when you are shopping for clothes as an alt person, I think you should still be looking at the basics and finding ways to dress that up. But sometimes people want to see what's already out there that they can find in the thrift store so they don't have to do more work. I feel like sometimes we should take the pressure off and customizing things, especially for those who may not have the access or the resources to DIY. And I do see that quite a lot within the alt community, and typically it is the skinnier creators who are saying these things to plus size people who are part of the alt community, and I don't think that's right. It's easier said than done for them. And I truly don't think that they think about these things. A lot of brands and indie stores just offer more straight size clothing, and they forget about people who are plus size. And like, of course, there's a whole other tangent about how the fashion industry doesn't cater to the plus size market. There are plenty of creators out there, and I don't want to go too far into that. But I do want to say that is an issue with alternative subcultures regarding this matter. And I feel like being alternative doesn't automatically make you inclusive. And I feel like we do see that sometimes from alternative creators who want to go out and be like, poser, 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 poser. You got to do it this way. You got to do it that way. If you're not dressing this way, you're a poser. We can't include you. We have to gatekeep you. And you know, I made a whole video about that 2 weeks ago and how absolutely insufferable that is. And that just absolutely builds up my point even more. At the end of the day, being a part of the alt community is about self-expression in the long run. And it is about rejecting the mainstream. There is absolutely no reason to be gatekeeping stuff like this. Because if we gatekeep the alt community just simply based off the size of our bodies, are you even alternative yourself? Because that I find to be really laughable. I think these are the steps that we need to take. I think we need to be supporting more inclusive brands. We need to question our own privilege if we're able to find clothes in our size at the thrift store or even within alternative fashion brands. We also need to listen to plus size voices in the alt community, because when we dismiss what they have to say, I personally don't think that reflects well on the alt community. So I'd love to hear in the comments, have you ever had this experience, or do you have any thoughts to open up a conversation surrounding this topic? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below, and if you liked this video, do make sure you give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!